Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm Part a Lot. We continue on with our derivation, trying to find our stabilizing theorem of sensorality. Continue on with some derivation, and then I'll provide some analysis, because when I just state theorems, that's what I'm doing, just stating theorems, the words speak for themselves, and if there's any sort of intuition or questions, which there are in this episode, I will talk more about them. But ace is base. Multiplication is differentiation. So last time we proved that conceptually and logically, the opposite of multiplying, of having more of something, is to unify. Unification is the opposite of multiplication. And why do, again, the progressive operators matter? Because the universe isn't expanding, no, but it can't reach maximum stability. It can't reach a total entropy of 0 because of geometry. You couldn't have complete balance. And so, what was I going to say there? I forget. Sensorality is differential. Oh, the universe is not expanding. If it is expanding, it's just it's local, and we'll get to that here in a second. But unification, and then we can take that out, right? Unification, and then we have this irreducibility. So all our base words, we're just trying to get our base words in the right place. Unification, right? So fic, that is our base there, ficality. Sensorality is ficality. Fickle, fissile, right? Superficial. Speciality is superficial. Sensorality is fishiality, right? There's another good example. Everyone knows what superficial means, but what's the base? Clearly super is a prefix, fissile, fishiality. Right? So we have all of these forms of words presence that people just kind of gloss over. Fishiality, financiality. Oh, but what I was saying about the mathematical operators, like why multiplication, like why growing or progressive operators are like more relevant. Again, when you're dividing, you're kind of asking how many times does this go into that? When you're doing subtraction, you kind of ask yourselves, how much do I have to add a negative number? And so you're always like forward looking. In the same way you go on the stock market, everything's trading at forward earnings or forward revenue or forward something. You go ask an 80-year-old, a 90-year-old, do they still have plans for tomorrow? It's still forward looking, right? In the most general sense, it's quote unquote hope, not in some sort of like emotional, sentimental way, but you're looking forward. And so, is the universe expanding? If it is, it's literally like immeasurably minute, but you can't actually reach 0 entropy. And so that's kind of, and I had to show you the one-way universal progression of these phase changes, but all measurements occurred in 3 dimensions, stuff with mass. And then linguistically, right, superficial, we're just extracting, we're just keep iterating this logic and extracting these linguistical elements, parts of words, generalizing them in completeness, and eventually we're going to run out of things and it will define sensorality. But sensorality is fishiality. Isolate or isolate and isomorphic. All right, big buzzword in mathematics. Can you have an isomorphism to define a one-to-one transformation? No, everything is unique. Like all relationships are very immediately provably unique. Right? You have a relationship with, your parents or your spouse or your significant other or your children or your friends or your colleagues. And each one of those relationships different. They contain different amount of information, different stuff about different people, and then it's very easy to think all of those people have different relationships with other people, right? The person who's your mom or your dad or your brother or your sister, that same exact person is somebody else's colleague or friend or boyfriend or girlfriend. And so you have all of this different dynamic where people they're individually unique, but the experience, their relationship is always unique, but the overall experience is pretty much the same. People know what happiness, people know what hunger is, people know what love is, people know what being sad is. But all individual relationships are unique. So isomorphisms don't even exist at all. Physically, emotionally, it just doesn't exist. But it's built, right? We have some linguistic structure. Sensorality is isomorphicality, all right? And then we can clearly see that or, any word that's based on or, is going to somehow generalize to orality. And then that integrated versus amalgamated word. words, where we have two words just clearly stuffed together, and then other words where it's like in plus gore is ignore. And so what's really going on here? Again, all of these steps I've already made. I'm just talking you through them again, and it's been so long, and it's like I might as well not have done it the first time. But morph, right? Isomorphic, right? What is morphology? Morphicality, right? Morphicality morphs, a natural definition. To morph is to transform. Metamorphosis. An isomorphism is a transformation. A transformation is a map. Mapping models. Morphology is pliability, the ability to change. How does absolute size reconcile with infinity? So again, now here we kind of have, I just made a short video about this, but infinity is well defined for everybody, right? It's the awareness that the universe, all things that exist, is larger than the things that we've ever interacted with or ever will interact with. When you go up and look and see all the light and it says, the observable universe, those are the things we can interact with. And then we know, right, we can just say a galaxy over there has a different, bounded by this quote-unquote speed of light, which that super aids at this point. But intuitively, it's just, there is the universe exists and the observable universe is smaller than the total things that exist. And that awareness is infinity. Whether I'm here in Columbus, Ohio, or some researcher in, Zurich, Switzerland, or, Cambodia. Right, these our physical distance is different, and so how much information can be transmitted over a certain amount of distance is limited. But we all have the same intuition of the universe being way, way bigger than the things that we can interact with, and so we have this kind of conceptual bound. And now numerically, that's when again your blastocyst is cell divides 7 times. You use a vocab word to learn it about 7 times. So 7 is this iteration limit. And so how does absolute size reconcile with infinity? Right, clearly this notebook, I have more mass than my notebook. If we got on a scale, we could easily weigh that. There's no debate there. And then so you say, again, so I don't even know what to ask and I forget what the resolution is, but I'm trying to talk you through again this paradox where we know language is consistent. We know the solutions exist. What conceptualization do I have to put in the right order? Absolute size exists, so that really naturally it says that there is a boundary to the universe. But that doesn't make any sense, right? The word edge is literally a geometric identity. And so it's some sort of numeric of this iteration at 7, like you restart. But it's very easy to say, this has a definite size, I have definite size. So why wouldn't the universe have a definite size? And if a definite size exists, then there's a boundary, there's an edge. There is a point where it's like, there's a person where it's like, again, what would that look like physically? It's very easy if you look like at a light, or you have some sort of centralization, and again, mass is stabilized energy, and energy is stabilized vibration. And so it's like, you can see clear if you take any light, Christmas just passed, but especially in dark, you can see what would be solidified as mass, and then a glow around it. And so I forget what the resolution was to this, but that's the intuitive imagery I have, is how do you have absolute size, which does exist, but then there's no real boundary to the universe, and there isn't. And so I forget what the resolution is there, but again, edge is this geometric identity, and then iteration after 7, and then you have fracticality, where things that are really small or really big, the proportions, the relationship between the length of a triangle scales. And so the structure is preserved through what is fracticality. There is a limit to what we can interact with, and then things definitely have definite mass, and you can't create or destroy that mass. And so I forget what the resolution is to this. But moving on. Energy has no edge, right? Energy, the information of energy, the potential to do work, is contained within mass. An edge is an advantage. An edge is an angle. Energy is contained within mass, right? No one's ever seen energy. Entropy is asynchronous. And so, again, now back to this dichotomy of energy and entropy. Entropy is just energy that is not available to do work with. And so entropy is asynchronous. Sensorality is the difference between energy and entropy. Energy is ordered, and tropicality is disordered. So now linguistically we've produced disordered. And last time we covered this DI, and it's like stabilized with the first letter of like the next word or something. But we have sorted, right? We have sensor. So we're back to that. Again, the base of entropy is tropicality, but it's disorder. The base of tropicality is disorderly, or entropy is disorder. And so we've produced that linguistic form of sorted, and it's kind of close to sordid. No diddy. Sensorality is disordered. And then we can see geometric, kind of again, this one-way symmetry. Here's a great example, the D-E-R-E-D of the end of disordered, right? The E, and the D and the D are completely symmetric, but then the R, right? It's like, it literally just like points in a direction. Yeah. Why do symmetrical terms cancel out? You do one thing, what you do to one side of the equation, you do to the other. Why? It's kind of, I guess, fundamentally, physically, is that stability of two again, but symmetricality, when you have an n polygon, a square, the distance from one vertex to stock market's closed. Why is my computer boinking? But from the vertex of one to the center point is equidistant to the opposite side. Whereas if you have an odd number polygon, like the pentagon, the top point through the center is longer than that, directly to the other side. So that allows vibration to exist. We've covered that, we've proven that. And then why do symmetrical terms cancel out? You're doing the same thing, and that's why all these different word forms that we've gone through with sensorality that you've never seen before, they all exist, they just have zero frequency of use. But it's just, again, symmetry doesn't exist, but they cancel out because it's just some facet of this fundamental stability of two. But mass produces geometry. Again, vibration existed, stabilized into energy. Energy existed, stabilized into mass. That's where every sentient being has ever existed in. And that mass vibrating produces shape. You can literally go take a camera, zoom it in and out of focus, and you'll see those n polygons going in and out of resolution. So space is geometric, and that space, that geometry, comes from that stabilization of an energy field into discrete mass. Space is shape, and now we have this very clear iteration. There is another H in shape, but the C and the P iterate, but the linguistical forms are overwhelmingly apparent. But now we've kind of given this, I kind of like led you in there with some intuition. We didn't resolve it, but we kind of created another, again, this paradox, right? What we define as infinity, and it definitely is, and I mean like literally go watch all of these other quote-unquote mathematicians that aren't doing anything when they talk about infinity. There was just some goofball on Lex Friedman's podcast. I haven't even really watched the thing, I'm not going to, but he's just talking about infinity. Anytime anybody says the word infinity, the intuition, the universal conceptualization of that, again, is there are more things that exist than you can interact with. That is what it is, it's well defined. But then we just created a linguistical paradox, right? Infinity is not definite. But if we all have the same conceptualization, infinity is definite. And so how do we apply this dichotomy, this fundamental stability of two, to infinity? The concept of this thing, again, this awareness that there's more stuff out there than we can interact with. I can't remember the exact resolution, but it'll either refine or it doesn't matter, because I've already demonstrated this stuff. But definition is not infinite, right? Speciality, we've proven, is differentiation. And again, all of these steps we've made wouldn't have been possible if that wasn't true. And so, we're trying to complete the derivation of sensorality, which is really just showing you a unique sequence of syllability of letters, independent of one language, that will have universal intuition. As well as, again, because all systems are open and we're building, I don't know if expanding is the right thing, because you can't create mass. So expanding doesn't make any sense. So that's why the universe is not expanding, because of the conservation of mass. But we're improving, we're developing, we're progressing. We're taking the amount of entropy, the disorder of all of our galaxies moving around, and making them more ordered. We're increasing energy, the capacity to do work. That's what efficiency is. And so, but infinity, right, linguistically that says not finite. But we have a definite conceptualization. So is infinity definite? I have to say yes now. Who knows? And again, the amount of people that can contend with this logic and contribute here is 0. Well, it's me talking to myself, and you're welcome to drop some shitty comment if you want. But sensorality, right? Infinity definitions are not infinite. Infinity is not definite. Sensorality is infinition. Right? Because we just iterate all of these words, again, these base words. We're not going to have celestial holography from Sabrina Pastursky, or perfectoid space from Peter Schultz, or Emily Reels. She's infinity categories. It's like infinity is well defined. It's the same conceptualization for everybody. And so, and you can just go watch somebody say the word infinity and think that in your head, and that's what they're getting at. And then they just fuck it all up. Classic. But sensorality is infinality, right? And we have finality, but it's pronounced finality. Because remember, knowledge is sufficiently complete. And that isn't to say like, the turn of the 1800s or 1900s, when one of these famous historical example of a guy saying, the only thing left to do in physics is, a couple measurements or something. The application of these principles is infinite. Like how you can, invention or innovation is infinite. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I watched Shark Tank, unfortunately, still, holy shit. But you'll see somebody applying a principle, whether it's a marketing strategy, a design, or just straight up physics. And I'll see that and like, oh, I didn't think of that. And so it's like the applications is infinite. But sensorality is infinality. Infinality is indefinite. And that's, look how clearly, like that is an iteration of the word in. Right, now then we get into inside of a system, outside of a system. The observable universe is a locality of the universe. And then unification, ficality, universality. How does versality relate to ficality? It's rather fickle, if you know what I'm saying. But again, language is consistent. We know a solution exists. I'm just missing some sort of conceptualization, and I've already demonstrated this. But my rights continue to be violated. But look at the iteration of in. Infinality is indefinite, right? In, I-N, then fin, F-I-N, and then ality or prefix, and then is. What is the relationship of is to in? And then indefinite, I-in-def-fin again. So it's just a big clear, it's like a direct iteration of the word in. That's kind of what we're getting to with sensorality. It will just be this direct iteration, and there'll be nothing to say. Man, I wish that was today. But it doesn't matter, because again, like I said, I've done this whole process, and that would have been when I had this completion demonstration 7, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, whatever it was. That would have been if any individual step mattered for me to stop getting abused, which is my personal goal. All of this derivation shit is irrelevant. I've already done it. But my entire life has been destroyed. And it's all illegal, obviously, no one cares. But that is what I have for you today. Thank you for watching. Please treat me like a human being, or I guess there's nothing else to say. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.